this book here, is from the library, which I've nicked because it didn't appear on their machine as having been borrowed by me through some software error, and it just seemed like they didn't want it. So because they perhaps didn't really want it, I thought I'd have it. It would be better on my shelves. It's a difficult read, funnily enough. This one, quite difficult. It talks about the latest research, and that latest research is kind of, what is it? It's sort of refined, quite refined. A whole mess of graves pointing in certain directions, point to various possibilities as to origin, such as warriors or females, warriors or females or different tribes. And I haven't finished it, and I'm not really overly moved to finish it. I haven't read any of this yet. It was a cheap thing from a charity shop. This was also cheap from a charity shop, but absolutely brilliant. Elsa Rosendahl is a Danish historian. The book won a prize in Denmark in Danish, and it's just absolutely superb. It's amazing book, amazing book. Elsa Rosendahl, fabulous. I couldn't imagine a better introduction to the Vikings, who they are, what they did, and when they did it, which ties in evidently with the Oxford History of England, Anglo-Saxon England. This is Sir Frank Stenton, and as far as I know, is a key seminal work to this day, even though it was published way back in 1946. And it has, as you can imagine, all sorts of details that are just not well known. The class system, the movement of the class system over the years, in particular, is perhaps shocking or surprising and eye-opening. Next is the particular volume as shown, which is from the Penguin History of Britain. David Carpenter is a professor at London University, if I remember rightly. King's College London, there you go. And then Christopher Dyer, his book, he is a key writer on this area. It's just, you just can't not read this one in particular. This has great stuff to say about, again, it kind of ties in with the new Oxford History of England for the similar dates, with respect to serfdom, feudalism, and the so-called class system, or the class system of the day, that really challenges all the usual rhetoric, for want of a better term, about how there's the Norman yoke, and there's all these peasants, and they're all oppressed, and they're probably serfs, and isn't it absolutely terrible and dreadful? And effectively, the New Oxford History of England, and this, and this, and this all give key evidence to the contrary. As simple as that, really. Moving on. This is actual texts written at the time by various persons, so it's kind of a peculiar read in a way. This is supposed to be the key seminal work on Richard I, the Gillingham, Richard I. Not a great front cover by Yale on this one, in contrast to some of their others. I've only read the first couple of chapters, and it's going to be eye-opening again. Common knowledge about Richard I and common hearsay about Richard I is not likely to be the case when examined by a proper historian, properly examining the historical record and evidence. Next is effectively the history of Europe, which is what the Barber is. Well, obviously it says so. But the new Cambridge medieval history, following on from the Cambridge medieval history, is the history of Europe. So we have volume 2, 6 and 7, which I'm just stunned to own. I picked up volume 6 first. It started with a 2. I got volume 7. I was amazed to get that. That started with a 2 as well in price. And then more recently I picked up volume 2, and that started with a 1. They're all hardback, and they're all like new. Just unreal. Just stunned. Amazed. I've read 6 and 2/3 of 7. They're very good in respect of the whole of Europe. The original Cambridge medieval history was a bit Western Europe, and there's lots of Southern Europe and Eastern Europe as well. A particular area that's been added to. What can I say about volume 6 and 7? Volume 7 starts with themes and then goes on to the particular countries and areas, in contrast to 6. So it's just instantly all the advance in civilization, European civilization at the time. If you want to start from the University of Bologna and head over to Paris, where Aristotle was read and then banned, and Oxford and Cambridge, and everything else, Venice, Genoa, Florence, Aragon, Castile, and some great chapters on England. How does Parliament emerge? How does Parliament emerge with the Commons? And how does the Commons end up being so important in this period of time, over and against the Lords? There's an amazing chapter in this volume that covers that. It doesn't cover anything else. It doesn't say a lot else. It doesn't waffle on about the 100 Years' War or much else. So again, I mean, they're big old books that are 800,000-900,000 pages each, but there's still an intro, because of course there's so many different countries and areas covered. But hopefully that's an example of what an intro might mean. This I bought recently in a charity shop again, and was to sort of kind of take the story forward. It was only £2.50, if I remember rightly, and I haven't read a single page of it. And then there's this fabulous thing on the end, which I can't get out because it's a bit tucked away. But this guy is a Cambridge guy, I think Jesus College, and started as a PhD and ended up as an amazing book. And I read a little bit of this, and I'm dead certain that it is amazing. Then we have kind of chronological advance. I bought the Penguin History of Europe as well for the period. And then what have we got here? We're quite a Keyes Brothers number. I haven't read that. The Morris Keene I have read, and that takes socialism in England to those dates. This is really a surprisingly good book. This is a surprisingly very good and very readable book, the Derek Wilson. But I got to about page 115, and then realised that he was telling me things that were not the case. And I haven't read any further yet, although I guess I should do so. Christendom Destroyed is the Penguin History of Europe for effectively the 1500s and a little bit of 1600s, obviously taking the story forward from the new Cambridge Medieval, Volume 7, because the Cambridge Modern was all done in the 50s and 60s, and although I do have a copy of it for that, it's a bit old, and I'm not convinced yet. I haven't read enough of this, really. Anyway, it's the new Cambridge Modern, but it's very kind of 1960s. So maybe it's good, and maybe it's sort of kind of could be better. So I have initially this volume, and then there's the other guy, the next volume, which is rather an acclaimed thing, which I have high hopes of. There's the Lisa Pickard book, which should be fun, and Somerset's a biography of Elizabeth is apparently the best biography of the many biographies. Lisa Goddard's Worldly Goods, I can't recommend enough. It is so good. It says it's a new history of the Renaissance, and perhaps it is. It's definitely a version of the Renaissance. What should I say? Books, libraries, printing, and corruption, and money, and debt, and jewels, and possessions by cardinals and bishops and the like. It's all in here, and it is astonishing. It really is amazing stuff, and fantastically written. And then kind of a bit of English and a bit of Europe mixed in. This I can't recommend enough. Keith Ratson, it's just unreal. Instantly, you the moment you start reading it, you realise you're reading something of a different order of history book, and every chapter is compelling. I've read as far as that, my marker, and I will definitely be finishing it without a doubt. There's some great chapters in the Kie, the Gun, the Slack, the Patrick Collinson, who is Professor of History at Cambridge University. Overton has some key stuff to do with how things work out if you have a 10-acre farm, as opposed to how things work out with a 100-acre farm when there's a bad harvest, and such like. The Cambridge Urban History of Britain, Volume 2, covers the years. There we are, 1540 to 1840. And I haven't read very much of it. The English Civil War, I've read a chapter out of that, and I've read a chapter out of the Signature of Brewer, and both appear to be absolutely tremendous. I've read a chapter or two out of Guy's The Tudor Monarchy. That's an Arnold's reader again, not his public, The Tudor Age, is it? Or The Tudors. The Hague, English Reformations, is basically all about religion, the Reformation, naturally enough, and detail, detail, villages and counties, and what on earth is actually occurring when laws are passed dissolving the monasteries, and what people reckon about it, not just in dioceses, but in villages, and how ordinary people live with, and what they think and what they do about it all, which seems to tie in crucially to what is known as social history, but that doesn't really do justice to the content of what social history actually is. And although it might be thought it was a bit of a yawn, I didn't think it was. I thought it was an eye-opener. But there we are. That's seriously for you. A couple more books at the end. A Blair Warden. He's pretty famous on all this kind of stuff. I haven't read a word of it. And John Redwood's Reasons with it, and that really is the John Redwood, the Conservative MP, which I haven't read either. Also, but I will do so. Coming down here, the next shelf, the Kishlansky Further Period, and I can't recommend this one enough either. This is also the next in the Penguin History of Britain, and it's just fantastic. He's a professor of Harvard, and as you would hope or expect, he perhaps proves why he ended up professor of Harvard and not professor of somewhere else. Newark? I don't know. Behind here we have Don Jordan. Boy, oh boy, that's a fast read. He is a train station history book maestro. And it's highly recommended, and interesting stuff. Pelicans of Joyce. Read some of it. Bit 70s, could have been better, writing-wise. Need to spend more time with it. Primary sources is exactly what it is. I haven't really looked at very much. The John Miller, I haven't looked at that. Voices from the World of Jane Austen, I have read that some years ago, and I remember it being very good. William Pitt, the Younger by Haig, obviously the former Foreign Secretary of the UK, and it's as good as you'd expect. It's as good as you'd expect. The new Oxford History of England, I'm cutting into this, and it's sort of next on my list, and is very good and very readable, in my opinion, and the content is, enlightening. I've just full on amazing stuff. And then we get to a whole lot of books, none of which I've read hardly a word of. Volume 2 from the Naval History of Britain, and then a recent one, the Napoleonic Wars, a very worldwide approach, quite modern. Looking forward to it. It's coming up very shortly for me. Christopher Bailey's quite famous pair of books. I wasn't impressed with his 20th century, so I hope to be impressed with his 19th, which apparently, according to various reviewers or regular people reading it, have said that it's very good. Paul Johnson, he did a cracking book about America, which was incredibly readable, and that was the key reason why I bought this book, apart from the fact that it was second hand and only about £2.50. So, boy oh boy, look at the size of this thing. There's plenty of this for just a few short years, but nonetheless, I bet any money it is absolutely amazing. Jürgen Osterhammel, this is a famous book as well, much acclaimed, and I'm very much looking forward to this. Back to this thing, I read some stuff looked up some stuff about 1848 and Germany and the like. So there's some cracking details. Maybe I'm being a little prejudiced towards stuff written back in the 60s. It had some nice things about the German Parliament and how they voted against granting Poland its independence to about 500 to 100, and how the kind of liberal group effectively had high hopes, and those high hopes were dashed entirely, and the rest is no doubt patently history. There's the Franco-Prussian War, the Kaiser, Bismarck, the Reichstag being ruled over effectively by the rulers of the states of Germany via the upper house. And when they wanted to go to war in World War One, they went to war. And that's pretty much the end of it. But it was also the end of them. Alas, of course, after World War One, things went very wrong for Weimar and the world, culminating in the Wall Street crash. Alas. But we're only the human race. What do you expect? History is full of it. These are all books that I have yet to read. But I have hopes that they will be excellent. I've read the Jeffrey Best, and it is absolutely amazing. I remember well reading about child mortality and how suddenly it began to improve in the Victorian age, as indeed, of course, things improved in the Victorian age across society and throughout areas of living and life. In human civilization, the Victorians kind of make so much happen. The nearer you get to 1900, the nearer you get to a world that we would be more familiar with, and the further you go back in the past, something like the less familiar it gets. And this one, the Jeffrey Best, kind of has so many signposts and markers of how that's happening and how that will be happening. I can't recommend it enough. The Lee Jackson I haven't read. I've read bits of this, and it is good as you expect. This is a very important text that I am ashamed to say I have not read or finished, but contains crucial stuff to do with, for instance, this whole PR campaign to do with the workhouses in the mid-ish 19th century, and how, in actual fact, that is basically what it was. It was a PR campaign to frighten people rather than an oppressive campaign to oppress people, which it wasn't. The next book, I haven't read anything of that. Apparently Harold Perkin is a bit, I don't know whether he's a bit liberal or a bit left. So hopefully that will be an important book for a perspective. Paul Johnson's 20th Century rather than Chris Bailey's. Haven't read it yet. Juliet Gardner's The 30s. I read some stuff out of that. Again, you see TV programs durdling on about how, send round the royal family in the Depression in the 1930s, and probably everything will be all right thereafter, which of course it isn't. And this has lots of good stuff about how even though there's no market whatsoever anywhere in the world for large container ships or sailing ships, Clydeside is opened up and 15,000 people stream through the gates into work to build a ship that nobody wants, but nonetheless they're all employed pretty well, just like the New Deal, the Tennessee Valley Project and FDR in the States. Not too dissimilar, and just completely the full historical record entirely in contrast to the propaganda that you may encounter on the TV, alas and sadly, in England, by effectively people who want to lie to you and want to propagandize. Why is anyone's guess to find out. Austerity Britain by David Kynaston. I'm sure it's a dead good book. It's one of a series. The Tony Judd is an interesting guy, and again, I have high hopes of this, and I've heard all sorts of people talk about how good it is. So, as they do about Piers Brendan, and I have read a good half or 2/3 of the Dark Valley, and it is very readable, very eye-opening, bit weak, bit wishy-washy on the English-British chapter or chapters, but otherwise it covers different areas of the world. So yeah, there you go. Well, anyway, that brings an end to those series of shelves. That's roughly chronological. So we'll pick up. Oh, wait a minute. What have we got here? The Extension of the Franchise, 1831 to 1931, Bob Whitfield. Absolutely brilliant book. Absolutely amazing. And Britain, 1890-1939. Yeah, not bad. Didn't think a lot of it. Henry Roosevelt, The French Revolution, it's just an amazing book. And I haven't read that much. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching.